Okay, now you have been a bit upset with this, haven't you? And it's most likely because a few videos ago we posted our picks for the best performance cars under $20,000, and apparently we missed some really obvious choices, and that has not gone over at all well. Actually, the links for those videos are up there and down there in the description. But there's a reason that some cars missed the cut, which brings us to this video. See, the following cars in this video, they are all awesome, and they can all be had for $20,000 here in Australia or less. But the thing is, if your budget is a strict $20,000, yeah, you could be running a bit of a serious financial risk. However, in saying that, if you can stretch the budget to say $30,000 and maybe put 10,000 of that 30 away for like a mechanical rainy day, buying one of these cars for $20,000 could be a smart way to go. Anyway, look, let's get into this, and just like the two videos that inspired this one, we're going to break it down into like subcategories or genres or categories of performance cars. So let's start with hot hatches. Okay, first up, it is the impossibly cool Abarth 595. Look, nothing drives like this little Italian nugget. It basically feels like a hyperactive front-wheel drive go-kart, thanks to it being not much bigger than a go-kart. But the thing is, it's the size that raises the first issue, the ergonomics. It's not so much a matter of taller or larger people fitting in the car. That is totally possible. But once you're in, the actual body positioning that you have to go through and the overall ergonomics can just be bloody frustrating. And look, I know this because I lived with one of these for many months as a press car. And once the novelty wears off, which takes about 3 hours or so, no matter what, I could just never ever get comfortable. And the same went for some of the other members of staff that had to live with it too. But the thing is, this isn't what makes the 595 risky. You can thank the turbo failures, electronic issues like malfunctioning sensors and faulty wiring, failing engine bay plastics, transmission issues, poorly fitted body kits, and rattling and knocking suspension for that. Look, when these are thoroughly maintained and cared for, a used Abarth can be a really good thing. But it's important to remember, many on the used market, they haven't been cared or maintained properly. And under that stylish body lies a budget-conscious little Italian hatch, and after a few years, yeah, this can become brutally apparent. Plus, Fiat is just one of the brands that fall under the Fiat Chrysler Automobiles banner, which is the very same company responsible for some of the world's most problematic vehicles, like Jeep, Dodge, and Alfa Romeo. Which brings us to another car that I personally utterly adore, but in saying that, I do tend to love some ridiculous cars. It's the mostly wonderful Alfa Romeo Giulietta Quadrifoglio Verde. Owning the very hottest of the Giulietta range is a bit like dating somebody that makes naughty content on OnlyFans. Sure, it might be completely trouble-free and a whole lot of fun, but you also know there's a serious chance there are some troubles brewing underneath that exquisite body. But what issues are we talking about here? Turbo failures, excessive oil leaks and oil consumption, engine electronic issues, transmission problems and clutch issues. Even inside, there are reports that the lights on the dash can illuminate unexpectedly to problems within the infotainment system. Then there are the quality issues, with owners reporting concerns with the overall build quality and fit and finish due to excessive interior rattles, loose trim pieces, and even exterior paint problems. Again, driving a Giulietta is undoubtedly incredibly enjoyable, but even then, plenty of owners have reported problems with the suspension, like noises and clunks, and rapidly deteriorating ride quality. And it's an Alfa Romeo, so parts here in Australia ask a premium, as does the labour to fix it. Plus, according to many owners, the after-sales support from both Fiat and Alfa can be truly horrendous. We've actually made a full review video of the Alfa, and the links are up there and down there somewhere. And coincidentally, we've also made videos on a couple of our next cars. It's the Volkswagen Golf GTI and the R, and their twins under the skin. If you're watching this, we're guessing you're a bit of a car fan, and therefore you know that Volkswagen owns Audi and Skoda and a whole bunch of other brands. So we're guessing that you know that this German giant shares a huge range of its mechanical components across various cars and marques. For example, and look, yes, this is being a bit simplified, a Mark 6, 7 or 7.5 Golf GTI is basically the front-wheel drive version of the same generation Golf R, and the Golf R is basically the same year's Audi S3, just wearing a different outfit. And the Scirocco is basically a sexy coupe-looking front-wheel drive version of a Golf hot hatch. Overall, all of these cars share a very similar version of the same 2-litre turbocharged engine. Now, there are mechanical differences depending on the application, and even the year of manufacture will determine what the engine is equipped with. But they are extremely similar and can all suffer from similar issues. We're talking water pump failures, timing chain tension issues, excessive oil consumption, turbo failures, PCV failures, mechatronics issues within the DSG transmissions, deteriorating engine bay plastics, even water leaking into the cabin, causing all sorts of electronic issues. They are all reported. Look, these engines, they are capable of insane power numbers, and thousands of owners have never and probably will never have an issue. And preventative maintenance and driving with some kind of mechanical sympathy is absolutely key to mitigate any of these issues. But the risk is, if you're looking at buying a Golf GTI or an R or an Audi S3 or a Volkswagen Scirocco, do you categorically know that the previous owner has maintained the car to the highest degree? Do you know 100% that they've driven it with care and respect? Because guys, these are highly capable and very popular performance cars. And many owners, unfortunately, simply abuse them and fail to maintain them correctly. Plus, OEM parts here in Australia, they ask a premium when it comes time to fix it. Yes, guys, these cars, they can be truly awesome, but it's just risky. Which unfortunately can also be said for the Mini Cooper S. Now at this budget there are a few different generations available, but the majority will be second generation R56 and R56 LCIs featuring the 1.6 litre turbocharged engine. Now positives first, these are so much fun to drive. They're fun to look at, they're fun to be in, but to own, well, potentially not. Because once you take off those rose-coloured glasses, the list of common faults reported are extensive. Timing chain tensioner failures, especially on older models, which can lead to catastrophic engine failures, turbocharger and high-pressure fuel pump problems, both of which can be very costly to repair. Then thanks to the direct injection in these engines, carbon buildup is beginning to be a real issue. However, intake valve cleaning can help minimise this issue. But in saying that, cooling systems can have major problems with owners experiencing water pump failures, radiator leaks and overheating issues. Plus electrical and sensor issues, they're a known drama too. Look, yeah, it's a very, very cool car. It's loads of fun to drive, but it's just bloody risky, even if it has been well cared for. And then we come to some of my personal favourites. In fact, I've owned a couple of these, and yeah, they were awesome when they worked and horrendously expensive when they didn't. It's the Renault Megane RS. At this price point here in Australia, you're most likely going to be looking at 2010 to 2015 models, which have been available in a range of trim specs and special editions, from the RS 250 Cup through to the RS 265 Trophy. And spoiler alert, look, it doesn't matter which one you get, they are all incredible to drive. Plus, with a few intelligent mods, they can be absolute weapons. And with fastidious maintenance, the Megane, they can shake off that whole French cars are fragile reputation, and many are very reliable. The drama is, as I and many other owners have found out, even with the very best care and attention, some major dramas can occur. We're talking turbo and intercooler issues with owners reporting turbo failures, clutch and transmission problems, cooling system problems such as radiator leaks and water pump failures, or just overheating issues in general, electronic issues that can include problems with the infotainment system, malfunctioning sensors, or just issues with the ECU, even weird suspension problems. Now we cover all of this and so much more in our full review video, which is up here and down there, of the Megane RS. And look, again, personally, I miss my Megane RSs so much, but I certainly don't miss forking out the thousands of dollars to keep them at their best. And the same can unfortunately be said for the Clio RS. This is another epic car. It's smaller, lighter, and more simple than its larger sibling, so you'd hope the problems would be less. But it seems like they're not. Again, with fastidious maintenance, many owners have had a faultless experience. But the risk is, when you're buying used, it is critical to find out if any previous owners have given the car the care and attention they require to be reliable. Oh, also, and sticking with France, if you enjoy working on your own car and have money and time to burn, the Peugeot 208 GTI is more than worth a look, and this thing is criminally underrated as a hot hatch. But it does feature the same engine as the Mini, and just like the Mini, can suffer from the same long list of issues. Plus the ergonomics, they're not to everyone's taste. For example, after testing one for a week, once I found a comfy driving position, which in itself took what felt like hours, I then couldn't see the gauge cluster properly. Weird car, awesome car, but just bloody weird. Now, before we go on, you know what one of the most underrated and critically important aspects of a performance car is? Being able to see where you're going. You've got all that power under your right foot, you need to see what direction you're sliding in. And coincidentally, The world's best wiper company, WiperTech, have sponsored this video and ReDriven. They're easy to order, they're easy to install, and they're brilliant at wiping all sorts of crap off your windscreen. And for 15% off your next wiper purchase, click the link down there. WiperTech, bloody awesome. Let's get back to the video. Finally, in hot hatch world, we had a few people pretty upset with us that we didn't include the Vauxhall, Opel, or Holden Astra OPC or VXR. So, positives first, a bit like the Peugeot, this thing is so underrated. Sexy good looks, loads of kit for the money. It's one of the most powerful hatchbacks that you can buy at this budget. There is so much to love. However, here in Australia, Holden, technically, it doesn't exist anymore. So there is a bit of a question mark over parts availability in the future, unless you're happy to import the parts yourself, and chances are you're going to need to because there are loads of reports of problems like timing chain tensioner failures, sometimes resulting in catastrophic engine failures. There are reports of turbocharger problems, oil leaks and excessive oil consumption, clutch and transmission issues, malfunctioning sensors and issues with the electronics in general, even interior trim issues and just poor build quality generally. Obviously, these have their fans, and for good reason. The Astra, it can be a superb car, but the problem is it can also be a very shit car. Is it worth the risk? That's up to you. Now, onto a whole different category. It's sports cars, or two-door coupes. Firstly, Audi TT. At this budget, the majority available will be of the Mark II generation and featuring the same 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder as the previously mentioned Volkswagen models and the Audi S3. And no surprises here, it can suffer from all of the same issues. However, the positives are that the TT does feel arguably more unique to drive than its hatch-based siblings, as it is a sports car. And from a design aspect, with the right wheels and maybe some quality lowered suspension, it can shake off the hairdresser's car image. Overall, the TT, it can be a superb thing. But if neglected, which many on the used market have been, it can also be a complete nightmare. And the same can be said about the exquisite Peugeot RCZ. You want a car that looks a whole lot more expensive than it is? Check out the RCZ. Plus, they are super entertaining to drive, and thanks to insane levels of depreciation, you can get yourself into a pretty mint condition example for not a whole lot of cash. The problem is, it has the very same engine as the 208 GTI and the Mini, which means random and completely unexpected issues, they can happen, even when they've been maintained correctly. Now, to many, a true sports car simply has to be rear-wheel drive, so enter BMW. And it's another one of my personal favourites here, even though they are a bit flawed. It's the E82 135i. Now, we've made a full review video on this car, so for all of the details on how awesome it is, plus everything that goes wrong with it, go and check out the video. But overall, the little BMW is incredible to drive. With even minor mods, it can be a true giant killer. And value for money, it offers immense bang for your buck. It's just that with the N54 twin-turbo inline-6 in the earlier models, those things can be plagued with electronic issues, water pump failures, high-pressure fuel pump problems, and dramas with the fuel injectors. While the later single-turbo N55 power plant, well, it can suffer from valve cover and gasket issues, again, water pump failures, oil filter housing gasket leaks, and Vanos solenoids playing up. If you're handy with the spanner and you love the idea of tinkering with your car, the little BMW can be an absolute winner. But for the majority of people that just want a fun, fast car that requires minimal maintenance, it's a risky choice. Okay, now the next category, convertibles. For those that don't want a Mazda MX-5 Miata, which is basically saying I don't want one of the all-time greatest drivers cars ever made, there are some other options that can be brilliant, but they can be a disaster as well. Let's start with the first generation 986 Porsche Boxster. Look, yes, it is a truly incredible car, and ignore the sometimes negative connotations that come with the most affordable of all of the Porsches, because even in base and standard form, it's an exceptional thing to drive, and for under $20,000, it might seem like a bargain, but it's not. See, it's still a Porsche, which means that you're going to be paying a substantial premium for OEM parts and maintenance in general. Plus, Boxsters at this price point will most likely have lived a hell of a life, and you might just be buying someone else's problems. And the same can be said for the Mercedes-Benz SLK. Thanks to massive depreciation, for $20,000, you can pick up a second-gen SLK in 3.5-litre 6-cylinder SLK 350 form. And to the dedicated fans, it is a superb drop-top performance car. However, it was produced during arguably the company's worst ever period, the Daimler Chrysler years, where the focus for the company seemed to be more about making profit for its shareholders, even if that meant cutting corners in terms of development and build quality. What you're left with is a little Merc convertible that can be a good thing, but it's a good thing that's going to require constant care and a long list of expensive spare parts. And finally for convertibles, BMW Z4. The one to get here, which will be a challenge at this price point, is the E85 3.0i, and obviously with a manual transmission. This is another hugely underrated car with a passionate and loyal fan base, and under that long bonnet, the M54 fitted to the earlier 2002 to 2005 models can, with fastidious maintenance, be a fantastic engine. The problem is, again, many out there on the used market haven't been given fastidious maintenance, which can result in everything from water pump and thermostat failures, crankcase ventilation failures, Vanos seal issues, valve cover issues, to excessive oil leaks and consumption. Again, and we can't say this enough, it can be an awesome thing when cared for, but when not, it can cost you big time. Now, our next category is sports compacts. Basically anything around about the same size as a Subaru WRX, just not a WRX. Let's start with the 2014 to 2016 Skoda Octavia RS 162 TSI, especially in wagon form, which is basically a Volkswagen Golf GTI in wagon form, which when described like that, might just be the perfect do-it-all car. Now, before we go on here, we have had a whole bunch of requests to feature an Octavia RS wagon. So if you happen to own a 162 TSI and you live in Sydney or Newcastle or somewhere close and you'd be happy for us to feature it on ReDriven, can you let us know below or just get in contact with us? Because yeah, we would love to feature one. But like the Volkswagen Golf options and the Audi S3 and the TT, it too features Volkswagen's E8888 2-litre turbocharged 4, and can suffer from all of the same previously mentioned issues. Plus, representing the, let's say, more affordable options of the Volkswagen family tree, some of the plastics, they can feel a little bit more brittle as they age. The interior trim sometimes isn't up to the same quality and overall wear and tear. And if the car hasn't been cared for, it can degrade substantially. I actually have two mates that own pretty much the same year Octavia RS. One of them treats the car like it's his firstborn and the car's simply superb. The other mate doesn't, and that car is riddled with issues. Then we have the BMW E90, 91 and 92 3 Series. Even though the 92 probably should have been in the sports car section, sorry about that. For $20,000, the ignore logic and focus purely on performance pick is any of these in turbo or twin turbo 6-cylinder 335i trim, which means they're going to feature the same N54 or N55 engines as covered previously in the smaller sibling 135i's. And yet, the 3 Series can suffer from all of the same issues as previously mentioned. A slightly safer bet across some of the BMWs that we've mentioned might actually be going with the less powerful naturally aspirated variants. That means for the 3 Series, sticking with the 330i, and for the 1 Series, the 130i. That's thanks to these cars featuring the naturally aspirated N52 inline 6, which avoids the complexity and excessive heat that comes with turbocharging, plus it also avoids the issues surrounding the N54's direct injection and high pressure fuel pump concerns. However, there are still reports of Vanos failures, hydraulic valve adjusters having issues, water pump failures, thermostat failures, valve covers leaking, oil filter housing gaskets leaking, and all of the usual BMW electronic issues. Again guys, look, yep, they can be totally awesome cars, but they do require maintenance and care and attention, and if you don't give them that, they're just bloody risky. Finally, we're onto muscle cars or sports sedans, basically big bloody things that are rear-wheel drive, that have fire-breathing engines, and the car that can be awesome but can be riddled with issues is the Chrysler 300C. For this budget here in Australia, you're going to be choosing between the 6.1 litre SRT or the 5.7 litre Hemi. And while they both tick all of the big, loud and fast American performance car boxes, they are very far from perfect. Now, it's not that the engine itself is bad, because the actual mechanical aspects are generally very, very reliable. These things, they do represent Chrysler's workhorse engine, and tuned examples can produce immense power. Plus, both the 5.7 and 6.1, they are often used in motorsport applications. That's how tough they are. But the issue, again, it's not with the engine, it's with everything that's bolted to it and around it. Electronic drummers, exhaust manifold issues, transmission issues, which can sometimes be so bad they can result in complete failures of the gearbox. As they age, the suspension and brakes can have problems. And remember guys, it's a Chrysler, so the build quality, fit and finish, and the materials used possibly won't exactly be outstanding. Anyway, the takeaway from this entire video is that for those of us that love to work on our own cars and are happy to put the time and money into thoroughly maintaining them to the highest possible degree. For $20,000, there are some absolute gems out there. But guys, we make up the minority of the car buying public. Most people, they don't want to get their hands dirty. They just want a fast, fun, and reliable car that requires next to no maintenance. And thanks to many previous owners not maintaining their cars properly, the cars we covered, we think are just a bit too risky for the majority of the market. Unless, of course, they're happy to fork out the cash for someone else to maintain it and potentially fix it. So to see the cars that we would recommend for the majority of the market, click the links down there somewhere. Sure, they might not be as exciting as the cars that we've just covered, but chances are, even with the bare minimum of maintenance, they're just going to keep working. See you next time. There's a whole bunch of cars, really obvious ones that it's the Volkswagen Golf GTI and R and their twins under the skin. So positives first. It can shake off the hairdressers. It's a bit like a hairdresser. Okay.